Hey guys, it's 3 a.m. and that means it's a perfect time to teach you how to use my AnimateDiff workflow. This is a really basic text-to-image, not text-to-image, text-to-video workflow, and let's just get into it. So we'll start off with the latents. We're going to grab a batch of 32 latents, and we're going to use our AnimateDiff evolved sampling nodes. We use free noise for the sample settings. I don't know why, but it just works. And then for the context options, if you're doing only a 16 frame loop, you want to turn on use on equal length. And then finally, we're using the V3 motion module. This is all SD 1.5. I don't use SDXL for animations because it just doesn't really work that well. And also, the SDXL checkpoint for AnimateDiff doesn't work with PonyXL, so. Anyway, down here we have our control net. This is just for OpenPose. If you wanted to use it, I was using this for like an astronaut floating in space. The trick is that you want to have a really low weight, so, I mean, this was only a 0.5, but you can make it even lower. And then if you're using IP adapter, you can use this batch images node. I don't know why it's here for a control net, but let's see. You can also select your checkpoint over here. Something that is kind of weird is the V3 motion module adapter LoRa is supposed to actually make the animations better somehow. It's supposed to like make them look less like GIFs, but it just makes all of my animations turn red, so I don't use it. I'm just going to bypass this node, but feel free to use it. Your mileage may vary. I'm using Marvelous Mail Mix. It's my own checkpoint, and I'm actually working on a version 3 of it, but version 2 works just as well. And let's see, for the conditioning, we're just going to use a pretty simple prompt. We're using like tag style prompts, and I'm using some textual inversion. So I'm using a masculine textual inversion and then a defeminize, just because these models are really prone to making female figures. But if we go ahead and just take a look at the prompt, there aren't any action words like walking or running or, I don't know, flying. So it's not really going to have that much motion. It really kind of depends on what's in the prompt. And also, if the prompt is too long, it tends to just throw out everything and gives you no motion at all. And then very similar thing with LoRa's, especially at higher strengths and higher classifier free guidance scales, it's going to cause no motion to occur. But beyond that, it's actually pretty simple. We're just going into an efficient K-sampler. This one runs a little faster, and I like the preview on it. And the best scheduler and sampler to use, well, at least the best scheduler to use for animations is going to be SGM Uniform or DDIM Uniform. I prefer SGM Uniform just because I get better hands out of it, and I get better, like, less grainy results, it seems like. And then the sampler, you could just pick whichever one you want. Make sure that your CFG scale is set appropriately. But once we get into the actual animations, you can see this one, it looks pretty good, but it's a little bit choppy. This is just the first pass, and it's 8 frames per second. You can see each of the individual frames over here. If you wanted to upload it to something like ComfyUI AI, you can right-click and you can save one of these previews, and it'll have all the metadata and the entire workflow embedded in it. So that can be pretty helpful if you're posting these. And so that you can get the settings back. I'm going to direct you over here to the fast groups bypasser. I'm going to use the latent upscale, so I keep that on, but if you wanted to use the ultimate SD upscale, you'd turn off latent upscale and enable the tiled upscale. But I prefer latent upscale, especially because of this node in particular, the neural network latent upscale. It works so much better than the regular latent upscale, so I use it all the time. And this control net checkpoint, I have the link right here. It's just to retain the original animation in the second pass, and that's why it has such a high strength. But we toss that into another K-sampler efficient This time I'm using DDPM because you can get like kind of more realistic results with it, but the sampler doesn't really matter too much in this case. But the CFG scale should be a little bit higher on your second pass just to get more detail, and you can do more steps as well because of that higher CFG scale. After that, we get into the frame interpolation. I'm using Rife 47. It's pretty good. It just doubles the frame rate, and that's all we need. And then I'm using this image contrast adaptive sharpening, and that just, makes the image a little bit sharper, a little bit nicer looking. And overall, you can tell the results. You can have, I just have an MP4 on the left and a GIF on the right. You can see the GIF, it just looks a little bit worse in every way, but overall, the animation looks super good. It's super clean. I'm really happy with how it turned out. There's a little bit of weird, fading in here. That's because of the context length that we set. We created 32 empty latents in that beginning step, and what that did was we have to split up the context of this animation into two separate windows for AnimateDiff to understand. So it only understands 16 frames at a time, because that's what it was trained on, 16 frame videos. And so it just kind of does the first 16 frames, and then it does the next one, and it has a little bit of overlap. So that is why you have these things that are kind of flickering in and out of existence, but for the most part, it's pretty coherent. The longer the animation, the more it just kind of turns into, chaos, but if you keep it to 16 or 32, it really is pretty good. So that is pretty much it for the workflow. I will say that the tiled upscale does take a little bit longer, and that's why I'm not going through and running the workflow, just because it takes 12 minutes to run through the whole thing, and I don't want to sit here for the whole time. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. I'll have the workflow linked in the comments as well, or linked in the description. So yeah, have a great day.